Then they took, this is Gospel according to John, chapter 18, verses 28 through 40. Then they took Jesus from Caiaphas to Pilate's headquarters. It was early in the morning. They themselves did not enter the headquarters so as to avoid ritual defilement and to be able to eat the Passover. So Pilate went out to them and said, "What accusation do you bring against this man?" They answered, if this man were not a criminal, we would not have brought him to you." Pilate said to them, Take him yourselves and judge him according to your laws." The Jews replied, "We are not permitted to put anyone to death." This was to fulfill what Jesus had said when he indicated the kind of death that he would have. Then Pilate entered the headquarters again, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Do you ask this on your own, or did others tell you about me?" Pilate replied, "I am not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priests have handed you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not from this world. If my kingdom were from this world, my followers would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here." Pilate asked him, "So are you the king?" Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I came to the world to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth will listen to my voice." Pilate asked him, "What is truth?" After he had said this, he went out to the Jews again and told them, "I find no case against him. But you have a custom that I release someone for you at the Passover. Do you want me to release to you the king of the Jews?" They shouted in reply, "No, the man must be Barabbas." Now Barabbas was a bandit.
Friends, pray with me. O God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations that are in all of our hearts be pleasing in your sight. Amen. What is truth? Imagine if your entire life legacy came down to 3 words that you said when you were under pressure. I doubt Pilate thought that this episode would be his most crucial decision in his entire life. But these 3 words, they are enacted every Holy Week for 2,000 years. You know, emperors in the Roman Empire generally forgot, no matter how powerful they were, no matter how they shaped history, we could only name a few of them. But Pilate, this low-level functionary in Palestine, everybody knows his name. In fact, do you know that there are only 3 human beings who are named in the ancient creeds? There's Jesus, of course, his mother Mary, and Pilate. Not Moses, not Elijah, not Peter, not Paul, none of the 12 apostles, but Pilate gets named every time people recite the apostles and the Nicene Creed. And if he had known this, he probably would have come up with a better line than what is truth. He did his best. He tried to wash his hands of Jesus' blood, but that too became his second most famous line, the said whenever a leader doesn't want to take responsibility for injustice but lets it happen anyway. So I'm wondering, how does he matter in this story? Like, does his character shape the story, or is he just sort of a foil? He happened to be the Roman who was in charge over this proceeding where Jesus is. And I think he matters in this way because John's gospel, the author is so good at developing characters. And we see a number of characters that only appear in John's gospel, and they make it very rich. You think of Nicodemus, the Pharisee, who came to Jesus at night. That story's only in John. The Samaritan woman by the well, whom Jesus gives living water, only in John. Zacchaeus, the tax collector, who climbed the tree to see Jesus, only in John. Thomas, the disciple, only speaks in John's gospel. So you see what John does is he uses these characters as teaching us, thinking, who do we identify with? Who are we in the story with our faith journey? Are we like the Samaritan woman by the well? Are we like Thomas? Are we like Nicodemus? Are we like Pilate in some way? So what can we learn in our faith journey from Pilate? And we actually get 2 weeks on Pilate, this week and next week. Yay, Pilate! Now, we don't know a whole lot in history about Pilate. Even as we read ancient historians, they were kind of divided on what his legacy was and who exactly he was. Pilate came from an equestrian family, which is kind of the middle ranks of Roman society. He probably rose through the ranks in the military. Some think his name Pilate was a play on words for the word javelin, right? So he probably had a skill set that was very helpful to be prefect of Palestine, because his job is to keep the peace and collect the taxes, right? And this is probably a pretty low-level assignment in the Roman Empire. It's a long ways from the heart of Rome. It's a very quarrelsome place. And if you were from the upper class, you would have thought it was punishment to get sent to Palestine. But if you were from the middle class and you were trying to rise, this might have been seen as a great opportunity. And so here's Pilate. And the Roman strategy for the places that it conquered is you had to work with the locals. You gave a fair amount of autonomy to them, but you sort of had to govern with them, so he has to work with the religious establishment. And the important thing is you collect the taxes. And they were very tolerant in a way of other religions, and so Rome would say, hey, you want to worship Yahweh? That's great. You just also have to put up a statue of Jupiter. And of course, Jupiter is also the god who protects the government. And if you know your history of the Old Testament, you will know that Israelites were not big on accepting other gods who conquered them, right? They weren't going to follow Egyptian gods, Assyrian gods, Babylonian gods, Greek gods. So they are not going to accept Roman gods either. I mean, Judaism is practically structured to resist outside gods. They've been doing this for centuries. And I say all this because most of the significant conflicts and stories from Pilate's reign are religious conflicts. So early in his administration, Pilate comes into Jerusalem and he's bringing the Roman standards, which are flags, and they've got the emperor on them, and they probably say something like, Divine Tiberius, Son of God. That flag is not flying in Jerusalem, right? And there were massive protests, and Pilate had to remove the imperial standards from Jerusalem, which was pretty embarrassing. He also had trouble up in Samaria, where a group had gathered and they were digging for artifacts of Moses. And that was considered pretty subversive, because you remember what Moses did, right? He overthrew Pharaoh. So that can't happen. So he sent a whole legion up and just crushed this little community in Samaria. And some think that's what Pilate got recalled to Rome. Okay, that's the history, so we know a little bit about who Pilate is. And most historians viewed him as brutal, shrewd, and effective. I mean, he lasted 10 years. That's pretty long for a prefect of Palestine. Now here's where the story gets really interesting, because the gospel writers are actually more positive about Pilate than ancient historians. And we're going to listen to the text to see why is Pilate reluctant to execute Jesus? Because this is a man that had no problem executing people. He probably executed hundreds of people during his administration. So why not? Was he cautious about getting into another religious controversy that he didn't really understand? Or was there something about Jesus that got under his skin, that made him think about truth and justice? So if we're going to imagine this scene, you have to imagine it like there's a play going on up here on a stage, and the stage is going to be divided in half, okay? And over here on stage left, you have all of the religious authorities, and they're going to stay on stage left. And they keep getting called the Jews. That can be a little derogatory. I'm going to call them the anti-Jesus faction. And you know why they're over on the left? Because they said they can't go into Pilate's headquarters because they don't want to be ritually defiled before the Passover. So they have to stay outside. You think, wait, what does that mean, religiously defiled? Well, if you came in contact with a dead body, you were considered ritually impure and you couldn't go into the temple for several days until you were purified. Or if you came in contact with a woman in her menstrual cycle, or it's Passover, and that's the feast of unleavened bread. If you had leaven or shook hands with somebody who had leaven that day, you were religiously impure and you couldn't have the Passover feast. So here they are over there. They're not coming in, and just I don't know what they feared was going to happen in Pilate's headquarters. I don't know which of those three things were going to defile them. But just note the irony. They're okay with distorting the truth, falsely charging Jesus, and trying to get him killed. That's okay. They can live with that. But God forbid that they get a little leaven on their hands and then they can't eat their Passover lamb, right? It's like, I don't know, a church that might see racism or homophobia and say, we're just going to look the other way, or we're not going to get involved in all of that. And then somebody comes along and changes a few words in a hymn and all hell breaks loose, right? Like we've lost perspective on what's really important if that happens. Okay, so that's stage left, anti-Jesus faction, right? Stage right is Pilate's headquarters. And that's where Jesus is. That's where he's being held. And so what it means is Pilate has to keep going back and forth. Talk to the religious leaders, he's got to go stage left, and then he has to go back over here in his headquarters to talk to Jesus. And what John has done, the author has done, is he's making Pilate go back and forth. And it's a device to show that he's double-minded. He's torn between, and you can actually see it in the stage directions as he has to go between the two of them. Jesus, the man of truth, and the religious establishment who's trying to get him killed. And he has to decide, am I going to fulfill Roman law and justice, stage right, Or am I going to do what's politically expedient? Stage left. Okay? So this is Pilate's dilemma. It's 6 a.m. The sun's barely up. Tough way to start your weekend, right? When you've got this crowd, this angry mob at 6 a.m., it better be important because here's this lynch mob outside. And the atmosphere, I don't know what else to compare it to, but maybe a Senate confirmation hearing. Do you have a sense that something's under my skin today? Right? Stage right, you have a distinguished jurist who has a wonderful reputation with the American Bar Association, is eminently qualified. Stage left, you have a senator, Ted Cruz, who's going to rant and rave about critical race theory and racist babies and let's protect our children and not teach them our history and so on. And, you know, his children go to the same kind of schools that Ketanji Brown, that her children go to. They read the same books. They have the same policies. And it's okay for his kids, but it's not for hers. I wonder why. And if that kind of makes your blood boil, my intent here is not so much to get into politics, but this is what it's like to read John's gospel. You should be outraged at the kind of injustice of this trial, okay? It's a dog whistle. So we're going to listen for the dog whistle here in John's gospel. Because there's not interest in justice for Jesus. So Pilate comes out to him and he says, okay, what's the charge? And the crowd says, well, if he didn't do something evil, do you think we would have brought him to you? Maybe somebody's just a little defensive here, right? I mean, when they're being kind of impertinent to Pilate. And so I imagine Pilate kind of giving them the backhand wave, you know, it's like, why don't you just go take him and judge him by your own laws? Really, I don't want to get involved in this. I mean, it's 6 freaking a.m. for Jupiter's sake. Oh, but we can't kill him ourselves. What a lousy lynch law. I mean, they sound like a bunch of whiners, right? Oh, we can't kill him ourselves. Would you please do our dirty work for us, Pilate, so we can go to Passover and feel good about ourselves? So Pilate now has to move stage left. Here he goes. He's going over stage right to talk to Jesus. And just imagine this. He is Rome's leading man. He is the power of the empire, and he's having to do shuttle diplomacy between what he sees as these barbarians over here and this hippie prophet over there. So he goes over and he says, Jesus, let's talk. Are you the king of the Jews? Who told you that? Jesus says. Look, Jesus, I'm from away. I don't know how to catch lobsters. I just like to eat them. Sort this out. Just tell me what you've done. And Jesus gives Pilate kind of a mysterious answer. He says, my kingdom is not of this world. You know, if I was a king, don't you think I'd have an army? Isn't that how it works? In the Message translation of the Bible, Jesus says, I'm not that kind of king. I'm not the world's kind of king. Does he mean his kingdom is off in heaven? Although he prayed, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven? Maybe he just simply means, I'm not the kind of king with armies. I'm not commanding violence. I'm not trying to conquer. He might have said, I am a kingdom. I am a king that's bringing a kingdom where love is what holds us together. I am not a threat. But Pilate, he's going to jump right in. He says, oh, so you are a king. Because he'd really like to get a conviction and get this whole dispute with the natives over with. And Jesus says, you know what I was born to do? I was born to bring the truth. And anyone who cares about the truth, who has any feeling for the truth, is going to recognize my voice. You know the next line, right? What is truth? I wonder how Pilate said that. Was it sneering? What is truth, really, Jesus? Truth is my decree. Truth is the sword of my Praetorian Guard. It's going to be what I say it is. Or was he more world-weary, frustrated? What is truth, Jesus? Truth, is that what these stage left people are about? Truth? You're going to trust in truth with these folks over here? Maybe Pilate's just being very straightforward about how he sees it. He sees what the truth is, and he doesn't like it because he's caught between people distorting the truth and Jesus, who is actually frustratingly truthful, and he's kind of caught between them. So what is truth? Pilate's watching this glaring hypocrisy, and the question is, what will he do about it? Is he going to sidestep the truth? Do what's expedient? Or is he going to uphold Roman law? Do a fair trial? Do what is right? And so you see how John's gospel is masterfully drawing us into Pilate's dilemma. And we're going to see next week how he's going to continue to go back and forth, and it's going to continue to get more and more tense, and the pressure is going to grow on him as he has unsuccessfully tries to resolve this situation. Ever been there? That's where John wants to bring us. To see Pilate's dilemma for ourselves. He wants us to feel the outrage of the moment, and the gospel is confronting us with the question. If you were there, what would you have done? If you are in a situation today where you have to face into the competing claims of truth, you see it being distorted, it puts you in an uncomfortable dilemma. What will you do? If you are outraged by the story of Jesus' trial, what will you do with your outrage at the distortions of truth in our time? Will we look away? Will we compromise what we know to be right for expediency? Or will we stand for what is right even if it's going to cost us something? Here's the hope of the gospel. If we take the time to read it, and we ourselves wrestle with Pilate's dilemma, and see ourselves wrestling with his tragic decisions, then maybe we too will find courage to live the truth in our day. And it's the truth that will set us free. Amen?
Amen.
Amen.